That's right. Good evening. This is the February 8th, 2023 Planning Commission meeting. And at this time, I will call for visitors. And I think Katie, is that correct? Okay, so Katie is here. And anybody else in the audience and wherever? Nobody else.
May as well sit by the mic.
No pressure, but you can.
Okay.
Why not?
Hi, everyone.
I like corners too myself. Okay, so at this time, we will call for, we have quorum, so we will call for an approval of the January 11th minutes after a roll call to prove that we have a quorum. So we'll start on the left.
Jonathan Mixer.
Cora Warfield here.
Ann Ellison here.
Ruth Ann Morris here.
And we have Terry, Brian, and Ricky gone tonight.
Okay,
Okay.
but we have a quorum.
Yep.
That's what
The
I,
only online participant, we have Judy online,
Right.
and that's it.
okay, thank you. Okay, so now we will move on to approval of the January 11th minutes of the Planning Commission.
I'll move approval. Second of those minutes.
Okay, great. So the minutes stand motioned by Cora and then Ruth Ann. All those in favor, roll call say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Okay, the minutes stand approved. So I have a question for you. If there's some typos or whatever, is it easier just to bring them up as we come across them?
Yeah.
Okay.
I noticed a couple.
Yeah, okay, great. Well, between us, then we got them, I think.
In the local.
Yeah, it's the only thing I do.
yeah.
Yeah, only thing I do.
If we miss one later, you can.
Yeah, I don't know how important it is. I mean, the points, yeah,
Yeah, because
okay,
we want to catch all of those.
okay.
Um,
With that, then I guess I will say that we're opening a work session of the Comprehensive Land Use Plan Update, Chapter 12.
Yeah, so we're doing, we're going to look at two chapters today. They kind of work together in a lot of ways, so that's why we're doing these two together. But we have Article 2, the land use planning, and then Article 14, urbanization and livability. So those are the two chapters we're looking at today. So it's all been formatted back into what the new comprehensive plan will look like. So at the beginning, we have the general description of what goal 2 in the statewide planning goals is, and this is where we're establishing our land use planning framework and process, and then this is also where the comp plan designations come in. So that's where you have the low density residential, medium density residential, and commercial are kind of establishing the description and what the city values in each of those areas. And we did add a little bit of local context here. A lot of this information was pulled from a portion of the housing needs analysis, and then we'll reference. We don't have the attachment number yet. That's why it's highlighted, because we still have to do some formatting there. But this we'll reference that housing capacity analysis, and I actually pulled those key conclusions from the housing capacity analysis, because we don't want to copy the whole plan. That would make the actual comp plan too long, but we're referencing that to make a lot of the changes proposed. And so something kind of as you all know from that housing capacity analysis, Toledo, way back in that old comp plan, it was supposed to grow up to 5,500 people was the estimate. So in 2000, the assumption was that Toledo was going to grow quite a bit faster than it ended up growing over the years. But now we kind of have we found out we have the opposite problem based on those Portland state estimates. I think they're underestimating how much Toledo is going to grow over the next 20 years. So I tried to put a note here on the second page underneath the table where it talks about Toledo will closely monitor actual population growth. So what happened is we took 20 years before we actually updated that housing capacity analysis, but moving forward, the goal is to be more in the 5 to 10 year range. Because we can definitely see if one or two subdivisions go in, or a subdivision and apartment goes in, we're probably already going to be close to surpassing that 20-year estimate. So that's something that we can monitor. And then in the case where there is a substantial change, we could go through that housing capacity analysis again. The state as a whole, larger cities are actually now required to update that on a more frequent cycle. I think I want to say it's 6 or 7 years. We don't fall within that. Toledo's too small, but that's that time frame is a better time to think about updating, rather than it is a 20-year plan, but a lot happens in 6 years that could substantially change those estimates. So definitely overall, our goal is not to wait that 20 years before we update. And then under that first goal, I actually thought of one other change that I'd like to propose, but it says to implement locally desired land use policies and practices that do not conflict with state of Oregon's land use planning program. I think it would be better to say are consistent instead of do not conflict. I don't know if that change sounds okay. So
Yeah, that's good.
I like that, yeah.
You're gonna say that are consistent.
yeah, instead of do not conflict. So it's trying to stay more in the positive.
And I had a question about the graph of exhibit 1. That's going to be part of the document, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so when you have RS and RG, those designations are changed, are they not now? Am I a little confused over that?
Those are still the same. We have,
We've gone to low density and medium density, and then on the next page, this designation implemented through the zoning single residential RS is crossed out.
yeah, so what's more common in comprehensive plans is it's kind of layered. So you have your comp plan, and then you have your zoning that implements it.
Okay,
And
so that, okay.
And the comp plan there could be one designation, like industrial is a good example. Industrial is one comp plan designation, but there's 3 zoning districts
Right,
that are actually implementing that comp plan designation.
okay.
So a lot of cities now, they'll have the descriptions in the comp plan, like we kept the low density, the medium density, those descriptions. But then the zoning descriptions are only within that, the zoning chapter. And that makes it a little bit easier when we do updates. So if we wanted to update the description of, say, the commercial chapter, we could do that and make that update. All we would have to do is make sure that new zoning description is consistent with the comp plan designation description, and that says it's relatively broad, but it says this designation provides for a wide range of commercial activities, including retail and service uses, as well as other compatible uses commonly associated with commercial areas, including allowing residential uses. And that's because in our zoning right now there are a few scenarios where you can build.
Okay,
Residential.
okay,
Um,
okay.
So it's a little.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if we were getting rid of verbiage or what was happening. So, okay, that explains it. Thank you.
Yeah, the table here is,
Exhibit 2 explains that a little bit more then.
yeah, and
Okay, got it.
that's new. It should show underlined there, but that would be new to the comprehensive
Okay.
plan. But this is kind of clearly showing, here's the comp plan and here's the zone that implements it.
Yeah,
In our case, right now, we kind of just have one map because ours are, everything's consistent at the moment. Whereas other cities, they've designated a comp plan map that's for the future changes, and then their zoning is kind of catching up to the comp plan.
yeah.
Whereas in Toledo's case, when it was adopted, everything is at this point consistent. And that's how we try to keep it.
And it seems like I read somewhere through here that there is something about, being able to change, and maybe that was the verbiage in the comp. Then, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, thank you for explaining that.
but it does shorten it a little bit. And
Yeah,
the table essentially in each of like the low density residential, that last sentence is crossed out because it says this designation shall be implemented through the single family residential zone, and the table is kind of taking that and making it a little bit easier and for someone that opens up the comp plan to review. So that's where we can kind of think about if these descriptions are accurate for each of the areas. We did update the low density residential and medium density residential when we went through the most recent residential code update. There were some changes there, but we didn't touch the commercial, industrial, or any of the other designations. We don't want to touch the estuary management units quite yet because there's that other process that the county is going through and the city's a part of, since we're on the estuary, and also the city of Newport's a part of that process. But we would update that section. Hopefully, that plan is done in the next 3 to 5 years. And then we can come back and update the estuary management units, and that would also be when we update chapter 16, which is the estuarine resources. So the other ones we can tweak the language if it doesn't seem like that makes sense for the area. So like industrial is provides a wide variety of industrial and light industrial uses, and recognizes that some water dependent uses such as boat building and repair are appropriate industrial uses within the industrial designation. The intent is to encourage industrial growth and provide for industrial development at appropriate locations to increase employment level, tax base, decrease service costs. So if there's, and we could come back to these later if you kind of read them and say, hey, we should add this, but they are meant to be pretty high level. Whereas when we come in the zoning purpose statement, it gets into a little bit more detail. And no, it's hard to think of those now, but if later on you come up with edits that you think you'd want in those sections, we can come back to those. And then kind of moving on, because you can see what was all deleted out. Those are the zoning descriptions, and those aren't being wiped out completely. They still exist within the zoning chapters. And then the overlay designation. So that there's kind of, this is the third layer, and the best example in Toledo is we have a Main Street overlay. For the most part, it's a budding Main Street from Business Highway 20 roughly all the way down to, don't think it includes the pizza restaurant cobblestone, but that's the end there. So that, and it goes off Main Street a little bit. And we actually updated our code where If a property is abutting Main Street, you have to keep a ground floor commercial. But if you're in that Main Street overlay and not abutting Main Street, you could have fully residential. So it's kind of recognizing that those storefronts are important for directly on Main Street. And then we could adopt other overlays in the future. If that's of interest. Some cities like have a historic overlay, or there's a lot of other overlays that could be adopted, but it's basically an extra in some cases an extra set of standards, in some cases it's actually exempting standards. So the Main Street overlay exempts you from some landscaping open space requirements, and then also from parking, some of the parking requirements. Just it's a different compared to like the bowling alley where you need that parking more so maybe than the downtown Main Street. So that's the overlay section. And then I have a few changes for the different policies here. One thing I did propose to add here on policy 4 is just a statement about reviewing that urban growth management agreement. So that's basically, there's the urbanizable land between the city limits and urban growth boundary. And if the county is the one that's actually reviewing those applications until it gets annexed into the city. And if it's developed in a way where it makes it harder to say they parcel it out in a way that makes a future subdivision difficult or build additional development, it's kind of defeating the purpose of saving that land to be urbanized in the future. Hopefully I described that well, but that's an agreement which we can revisit because I think it's from the 80s.
No, it was during the last comp plan, 2000.
2000. Okay, we did do that in 2000. So it's older, but we could revisit that to think about ways.
The way I read this is that, does this mean then that the city has leverage with the county when they're deciding how they're going to zone something within our urban growth? Because right now our urban growth boundary is somewhat dependent on county zoning also, isn't it?
Yeah, in that agreement, you can have certain requirements to protect land. I don't know off the top of my head Toledo's, but when I worked in a previous job in Polk County, there was one where if a property is abutting the city limits, partitioning that in the county was really restrictive because the goal was that you want to annex that and develop it at city's urban standards rather than say 1 or 2 acre lots where you would have less available housing than a subdivision.
I think in Lynn counties was some kind of joint approval where the city planning department actually gave input.
Yeah, I noticed it and thought it was a good addition. Yeah. Okay.
And this is basically encouraging us to revisit updating that. It's not giving us like a deadline or anything, but I think that is something that would be good to revisit. And the next change was policy 6. So it said to ensure up-to-date and accurate factual information, the planning commission may be given the authority to adopt up-to-date information. But in terms of most of the time how it works, like the housing capacity analysis or the economic opportunities analysis, the different studies, planning commission makes the recommendation, and then city council has the final authority to adopt. And that's where that factual information comes from. I think it makes the studies is where it's coming from. So I think it makes more sense that it's council, that's the final adopting authority of those plans. And another one is we have our natural hazards mitigation plan that's updated every 5 years. And the council adopts that by resolution. So it makes more sense to have the council kind of the head there. And then policy 7, I crossed out periodic. Actually, it should continue and cross out.
Under
Will see if Toledo will.
Review. And take out of also.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, that's probably right, yeah.
Oh, review, yeah. So that I'm taking out that periodic part,
Yeah,
because it used to be that cities, technically it's there, but there's a periodic review process, but that's not really active at this point. So we can call it that we do plan to review our comp plan, but it's the periodic part is less applicable than it was 20 years ago. And then I wanted to add kind of some sub bullets to that.
7.
Policy 7. So there were 3. The first one would say remains current and responsive to community needs, retains long-range reliability. And then the third is incorporates the most recent and reliable info. So those are just kind of what the reasons why we would go through that review process. So let's say we got to the point where we realized we're growing, we had a population growth of 100 in the last 5 years, maybe say, that's where we would want to jump in and do a new, take a look at that study again to update the numbers.
And that would be new and reliable.
Yeah. And then under policy 8, the amendments, I wanted to add a sentence around future boundary amendments shall utilize property lines whenever possible to facilitate boundary management and site developments. So that's just say if someone wanted to update the comp plan, they wanted to change from commercial to medium density residential. The goal would be that it follows along the property lines, that you're not arbitrarily just drawing a line across. But it makes things a lot easier down the road. There are weird cases where one property has 2 zoning designations, but for the most part, it'll follow the actual property lines. Because when those changes are made, you want to use the legal description when you're kind of making that change. And that the same thing for annexations. Part of that annexation process is the legal description being submitted, so it's accurate. So those were the changes I had for the land use chapter. And for urbanization and livability, it starts similar, just a description of goal 14. And then I did put some bullets or the A, B, C, and D there to make sure it was really clear kind of when UGBs can be expanded. And then a little on the local context here, we reference again our new housing capacity and economic opportunities analysis. And then this will get into a little a little detail about the challenges that we have within Toledo, specifically the slopes that create challenges, and that's why later we'll kind of talk about the UGB swap as maybe a way to mitigate some of those challenges possibly. Go ahead.
The word swap, is that a word that's commonly used? Is that a terminology that's I'm wondering why swap as opposed to exchange. It just seems silly, but it sounds,
It doesn't sound right.
it just doesn't, I'm just wondering, can we use another word?
Yeah, land,
And then a boundary swap. And I'm just thinking, if you got somebody also, so it isn't just me. And if you're the person that's in one part of the negotiation and you're not liking it, you're not going to like the word swap. You're going to be more prone to be into an exchange,
yeah,
perhaps.
that's a good point, and I don't think there would be anything.
I'm just wondering if that's
Yes.
common enough that if we were to use another word, it would be confusing to
Yeah,
people.
I've always heard land swap or UGB swap. There is.
That's what I've heard.
I mean, that's
what
That's right. I'm not saying that, but yes, it seems like that's the
that is the
most
common.
common verbiage when you hear
Okay.
that sort of thing.
Okay.
Swap.
Okay,
Yeah, and it
I
does
just-
get a little.
it's fine. Okay, I thought it was, but I just thought I'd bring it up. I just had to bring it up.
There, with the land swap, you're right, because someone would be removed from the urban growth boundary, whereas someone would be
Yeah,
added.
I mean, this is land. It isn't, like somebody's dish towel,
Yeah.
yeah.
And a
Yeah.
component of going through that analysis would be outreach and figuring out, because there could be a property owner that wants to be
Yeah.
out of the urban growth boundary. There could be that scenario.
I understand the procedure. It's just the terminology.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay,
It is a weird term.
yeah, okay.
And then the third paragraph there in the land, in the local context, it does reference urban services, so our water master plan and our wastewater master plan. So likely what would happen if we went through that study to look at a UGB land swap or exchange, we would also be looking at urban services, like some analysis on the cost to extend those services. Because we wouldn't want to pick, say there's an area it's not prime farmland, there's not a lot of slopes, but then it would cost millions and millions of dollars just to get
Everything.
water out to that property. Then it wouldn't make sense that's the property that gets added into the urban growth boundary. So it's kind of making sure that we're covering our bases there and doing each of those at the same time. But the water master plan and wastewater facilities plan are I'd say not that old at this point. The wastewater facilities plan is starting to get to the point where it's older. But that's something we'll talk about more when we get into Article 11, which is the public facilities chapter. There were actually in this chapter quite a few policies that I proposed adding. The one is a pretty straightforward policy, but designating land for projected growth. So designate land uses in a manner that accommodates projected population and employment growth. So that gets at exactly what the housing capacity analysis was attempting to do, making sure that we had enough residential land designated for future growth. Policy 2 is not new, but it's talking about discouraging low density sprawl in urbanizable areas. So that this is this is what I was talking about in terms of that area between city limits and the urban growth boundary, but and then also just in general, and it covers it a little bit in another policy that I'll get to, but you can have minimum density requirements for a subdivision. So that's just ensuring that if there's a 3-acre parcel, that there would have to be a minimum density of this. And our code currently has, we haven't had a recent subdivision, so we haven't had to look at it recently, but our code does have a minimum density standard to ensure that that would be the case. And then here's policy 3 is coordination with Lincoln County. This is a little bit related to that, what we talked about in the urban growth management agreement, but establish and periodically update urban service, urban planning, and other formal intergovernmental agreements as needed to support urbanization, annexation, and urban service provision. Policy 4, commercial and industrial lot sizes. Manage commercial employment land to provide a range of lot sizes that accommodate a variety of employment types. So this is making sure that we don't just have a bunch of really small commercial parcels within the city. Because if say a larger, there was a need for a larger project, it would need a larger lot. And when we go back to our economic study is from 2010. That's something I think that would be something that we want to focus on, is making sure not only that we have enough land on the aggregate in total, but that we had a good mix of smaller and larger parcels. Routinely verify supply of developable land. So this is getting at the employment and housing, but meeting the short and long term supply. Policy 6, and this is what we've been talking about, the land swap, but I think we could put in there exchange.
It's just extra verbiage.
Yeah.
And no, there's no sense adding extra words. Yeah. I mean, if that's what's commonly used and like the bankers and everybody accept it, then that's it. Maybe it'll change.
Yeah, maybe it will.
Yeah.
But I think
It just sounds bad.
yeah. Having this actually as a policy in the plan will help if, say, there's a grant that we want to go after.
Yeah.
We can refer to that policy and say that is a priority. And then policy 7 is around compact development, and then I added a little bit around facilitating infill of vacant or underutilized lots. So there are, I mean, not a ton, but there are some vacant lots within the city that have potential to be redeveloped. No changes for the next few policies, but policy 8 gets into a little bit around the density, but also keeping in mind that there are natural features. And that's actually in our subdivision chapter, there's kind of two pathways to meet minimum density. One is kind of if there were no natural features, and then one is, say, part of the lot is really steep or has a wetland. There's a different pathway to meet that minimum density standard. And then here,
Is that stated somewhere?
that's in our subdivision chapter in the
What chapter?
in the code. So chapter oh gosh, no, off the top of my head I can't.
That's all right, that's all right.
It's 17, but I'm trying to think of the subsection.
Yeah, 17, something or other.
Yeah, dash.
Yeah, but it is there.
Yeah, it's proportional type of thing, I think, is how it works.
Okay.
And then policy 9 is where I mentioned those minimum density standards. Policy 10, I'd say it's kind of related to that. Policy 7 in terms of compact development, but land use patterns, where you might be able to walk or bike for some of your trips. So say there was an infill development that was near downtown, you might be able to walk to restaurants downtown. So just kind of another option. And that's also related to how our main street encourages upper floor residential, to where some of those local trips could be by walking or biking. And mixed use development, and then a little bit on urban design. And development maintenance. Encouraged. Yeah, and this is one where we have the encourage the redevelopment of older projects to meet modern standards for site design and landscaping. But often in terms of how it works is that doesn't get triggered until someone does a redevelopment. So say I have an older property, those modern standards aren't triggered unless there was a substantial redevelopment of that property. So say the restaurant on the north side of Business Highway 20, that used to be, that's all run down at the moment, near Ace there. So that if that was redeveloped, it would have to meet the modern standards of landscaping. So there would be components around the street trees and other standards. So it's kind of one where it's like you encourage it, but it's hard unless there is redevelopment. Facilities and services provide for orderly and efficient extension of services, and this is where our facilities plans really get into the details of that. And here I added policy 15. So development contributes to funding urban service extension. So adopt additional funding methodologies as needed to ensure new development and redevelopment adequately contribute to the extension of public facilities and utilities. So we do currently have policies where if the water line needed to be extended out to a property, that the property owner is bearing so some of that cost to extend that utility. Those were all of the changes that I had proposed. I don't know if anyone saw anything else, and I can capture any of those typos too that we need to make edits to.
That's all nice.
Moving forward, we're getting closer to kind of going through all the chapters. But next month, I'm looking at definitely the public facilities chapter. And then possibly adding in goals 16 and 17 too, because they would be really minor edits, because one is the estuarine resources where we're waiting
for the other.
Yeah, it'd be more so reformatting and just kind of revisiting. And then goal 17 is coastal resources, which is a pretty short chapter as well. So possibly could be a big month. And then April, probably doing goal 5 and goal 6, which are that's natural resources, and then air, water, and land resources. So those go well together as thinking of the updates. And that would be, at that point, we would have looked at every single chapter at least once.
Oh,
And then the hope would be a joint work session. I talked to Katie, and now I can't remember the potential date I threw out there, but I think it was end of April.
Yeah, it was, I think you were thinking. I don't know if you're thinking the third week of April or the very end. I can't remember if it was the 23rd or something like that. I can't.
It might have been that last week of April, just because that's usually the work session for council.
Okay,
What day of the week?
It would be Wednesday.
It would be, oh, okay,
Wednesday.
okay.
And I meant to ask you about that because I wanted like. I didn't know if that had gotten counted down or not, or no.
Not yet. I need to talk to Judy to make sure there's time. But hopefully at that point, we would have most of the chapters at least in pretty good draft format, and then. The plan is to also work with Katie to help do some outreach at some of the summer events too. So we did the survey last summer, but now that we have kind of a comp plan draft put together, doing some more outreach, and it'll be great to have Katie there to kind of talk to the public and get additional input, because we've had Arlene is still sending the emails to anyone that provided their email through that survey. But as you can see, we don't have anyone that came out. So hopefully going to like our Oysters and Brews and the other events, maybe we can get some additional input that way. It can add to kind of our community outreach, which is goal one is the community outreach, and we want to make sure we're meeting that goal. So yeah, I guess joint work session in April, community events through the summer, and then probably early fall, another joint work session. And then we're into the adoption of the probably November, December, or December, January, depending on the timing. But planning commission's meeting would be in 2023 to adopt. And in that process too, we'll send the once we get the drafts a little further along, we'll send those drafts to DLCD, our regional rep, to see if there's any additional things we need to add to the comp plan. But that's everything I can think of. Did I miss?
Sounds good.
Anything?
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you. And we will, it's nice to see a lot of the changes. And so are there any updates or reports from anybody? I'm closing the work session.
And I'd just like to mention that we are looking for 3 budget committee members. And that doesn't include you. You're still on the budget committee.
I was wondering, I thought I couldn't remember. So I was, oh yeah, it's that time of year.
I'm pretty sure you.
I think so.
Yeah.
Okay.
But we have 3 vacancies, and we also have an empty chair for city council. They have 1 applicant they're going to interview tomorrow night, but there'd still be time if somebody wants to be considered to get their application in tomorrow. So just wanted
How
to throw
long's remaining in the term, Judy?
in which term?
And the term that the person will be appointed the city council position?
I think it's a full 4-year term.
Who's the vacant person?
Whole year?
Or-
4 years?
Did somebody leave?
On the end.
Rob Dutrow.
Yeah.
Oh,
Ron.
okay.
He was moving or something, wasn't he?
Yeah, I think so.
I think I heard that.
So he didn't run.
Yeah. Okay, well, that sounds good. I had a question regarding the old gas station across from I noticed they cleared it out. Are they going to do the gas tanks too, or does anybody know what's happening there?
So it's county foreclosure. So the
Is that
county,
county foreclosure?
County's so likely.
so county was,
Okay, and
county hired contractors.
okay, and are those those old gas, were they removed already, or they're still
I
there?
think they were. I thought they were. removed.
That's what I
Removed.
thought. Okay, I couldn't
I
remember.
think Arlene and I looked at. Found a DEQ thing that said at least one tank was removed years and years ago.
Okay,
Oh,
And that
the
was-
other one is still there?
but we don't know what,
I don't,
okay, it'd be interesting, yeah.
but I think at least one tank.
Can't be one, can't be
Years
any.
and years ago.
Okay. Because that is, I mean, that's within the city limits, right? Okay.
Yeah.
It's
I was
already
pretty-
looking
I
so
was
much
pretty,
better though.
I know, I was
isn't
pretty
it?
sure it was. I
Yeah.
was just thinking, yeah, why the county was foreclosing. Okay, well, it was just pure
I
curiosity.
think they'll sell that.
Oh, yes.
It's a good location.
great
They
location.
asked for it, but because there's other interest and there's value to it, I think they will sell it after the tax foreclosure and then
It'll, yeah,
split the money back.
See what
to the
happens.
Taxing districts.
yeah, it's a good location, but but depending on, I'm looking at traffic potential, depending on what they do with it. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay. Any other comments from anybody?
I wanted to know who this lady is.
Oh, my name's Katie and I'm a rare member, so it's a resource assistant for rural environments. And I'm serving right now at City Hall under Judy, and I'm helping with projects for capacity reasons. So I help with Art Toledo, and then I'm doing like recently a business survey throughout the town. So just really helping with projects that are already in the works. And
Is it cuter? What?
it's Kiter.
Kiter,
Yeah, it's like
okay, thank you.
impossible to pronounce.
No, I wasn't sure.
Time or part-time?
I'm full-time, but I only serve for 11 months, so I'm here until the end of July.
Oh, okay.
We'll take advantage of it.
Mhm.
Yeah, so I'm doing all kinds of things, marketing and all over the place,
Great.
but it's a lot of fun.
Is that it? Okay, we're adjourned. Everybody have a good and safe Valentine's Day. Don't get crazy.
Have a good night, Judy.
Good night, everyone.
You